Welcome to Command Line Drupal. We will discover Drush, Drupal's Swiss Army knife. By way of introduction, I'm Joshua Schroeder. In 2009, I co-founded a web design and development company in Lethbridge called Redwall Studios. We specialize in custom-built Drupal solutions for small and medium-sized businesses. I'm also a developer at the University of Lethbridge and have been heavily involved in introducing Drupal into our environment there since about 2007. My educational background is in management, also from the University of Lethbridge there, where I graduated with a degree in Management Information Systems. My Drupal experience kicked off in late 2007. I attended a Lullabot training workshop. If you're looking to do some learning with Drupal, I would encourage you to check out their website. Since that time, I've been working pretty nearly exclusively with Drupal, about 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Along the way, I've built 2 modules that have made their way into the Drupal.org contributions repository. One of those is a little jQuery enabled floating menu that is for site content managers, and the other is an API integration piece for an external website. Slide share item there, you can find a copy of the slides that I've used in this presentation if you'd like to download it from there. You'll benefit most from the presentation if you don't feel out of your element at the command line and if you have a basic understanding of Drupal. There's not any advanced shell programming or Drupal coding happening. It's just our goal to understand what Drush is, see it in action a bit, and revel in its beauty. Drush stands for Drupal shell. It's not a module that needs to be installed on any particular site, but it's a collection of scripts, a command line utility that can be run on your server to execute tasks on all of your Drupal installations. It's important because Drush is independent of any particular Drupal installation and can be used on any Drupal site installed on the same server as Drush. I expect that a lot of Drupal developers are like myself in that they spend a lot of their time in a terminal window. They probably keep one open all the time. If you're of that persuasion, you'll probably find that Drupal at the command line is just a really convenient thing to do. And those of us who favor using command line utilities probably generally favor using keystrokes as opposed to mouse gestures. So sometimes it's just a lot easier to type in Drush clear cache than it is to navigate through 4 or 5 pages to click on the cache clear button in Drupal's web interface. The real power of Drush often comes when you want to script mundane tasks, migrating a site between servers and running cron jobs on multiple sites within a server. That sort of thing can be greatly simplified using Drush. And finally, keeping up with security updates. It can be a headache, and it's something that we tend to get lax on sometimes and results in security holes. Drush can make that whole process a lot easier, and it keeps you from having any excuses for having an out-of-date and insecure website. Drush also has some cool ease-of-use features to it. For starters, it knows the Drupal site that you're working on based on your present working directory. It doesn't matter how many Drupal installations you have on your server. Just Drush knows based on the context what site it's working on. And it also knows what version of Drupal you're using. You don't need to install multiple versions of Drush for multiple versions of Drupal. It just works with all of them, 5 through 7 at this point. If you're using Drupal, you probably already meet the requirements for using Drush. It runs on your server alongside your Drupal installation, so you have to have shell access to the server, obviously. And you also need PHP compiled with the command line interface. At its heart, Drush, like Drupal, is a PHP script, so it does need to be able to run at the command line with PHP, and it requires version 5.2 of PHP as well. As I was presenting my slides this week, release candidate 3 of the 3.0 version was released as the current recommended release, and the development team has hinted that a stable 3.0 will be released before DrupalCon. I'm leaving for DrupalCon next Saturday, so that could be any time now. You can simply just download the tarball from the project page, extract it somewhere on your server. Basically, you make the Drush script. There's a little bash script that calls the PHP. Make that executable, and then create a symlink or add that folder into your path, or create an alias in your bash profile. Some way of being able to just call Drush simply from your command line. I've found that creating a symlink is useful if I'm setting up a server for a number of individuals within my organization, but if it's on a development server, sometimes it's just quicker and easier to set up a little alias in my bash profile for myself. Configuration of Drush is handled through a file called drushrc that can reside in one of several locations. If you put it within your Drush folder, and there actually is one there by default, it applies server-wide to all of the Drupal installations that you're executing Drush commands on. You can also have a Drush RC residing within your individual sites folder. If you're familiar with Drupal, you'll know there's a sites, all sites default, and then you can have a folder for each Drupal site running on an individual Drupal core. So within that sites folder, you can add a Drush RC whose settings apply to that particular instance of Drupal. Within this Drush RC, you configure path locations, SSH connection information, site aliases, checkout handling via CVS, database dump options, some default command-specific options, and Drupal variable overrides. A lot of the sort of thing that you could configure in a settings.php for your Drupal installs. The site aliases and their associated path and SSH information, those are settings that I found particularly useful because you'll use them with Drush's rsync and SQL sync in order to synchronize between different servers. Within the Drush package, there's a Drush RC file that documents all the available configuration options that are available to you. As you'd expect, just typing Drush or Drush help summons a help page that will give you some documentation for deciphering all of the options and commands that can be inserted in there. So there's just a quick look of what you would see if you type Drush help, that, and the, oh, that really doesn't look good on the, when it's projected, does it? And that's the list of the commands available. We'll actually take a look at some of these here. Some commands require a certain version of Drupal to run. The site install command in particular is new to Drush and requires Drupal 7. Several others require at least Drupal 6, but for the most part they're compatible across the board with 5, 6, and 7. So let's get into some of those commands that we had listed there. Find out what exactly it is that Drush can do for us. The first command that I'll discuss here is Drush status. It can be aliased as st, so you can just type Drush st as opposed to Drush status. This command gives you some basic information about your current Drupal installation. It'll include the root of the installation, what version of Drupal core it's running, some various paths and database information, as well as some PHP and Drush information there as well. PM download is the first of a number of package management commands. This will download a project from the repositories on Drupal.org. You can then use that to download Drupal core, contributed modules, or themes. The name to specify in this Drush command is the same as what you would see in the URL of the project page on Drupal.org. I don't know if you can see the image that I've got there, but it's a screenshot of the project page for the content construction kit. The path for that is /cck. So that's what we would refer to content construction kit as within the context of Drush. You can additionally specify a particular release if you don't want to use the current recommended release for your version of Drupal. So that last item there on the slide, Drush DL backup migrate 6x 2x dev, that's specifying that of the backup and migrate module, we want to download the Drupal 6 version and the version 2 development branch. So development 2, or version 2 of the module for version 6 of Drupal. We also have a PM list command that is going to give us a complete list of all the modules and themes that are currently available to our site. So anything that's living within our Drupal tree will be listed on there. This includes what package it belongs to, whether or not it's enabled, and what version we have available to our site. Once we actually have it living within the site and showing up on the PM list there, we can enable it with the PM enable command. The same as the download command, you can specify multiple modules to enable at one time. And the opposite of PM enable would be PM disable, which will disable that module from your site. It doesn't uninstall or remove the module. Any variables or configuration that resides within your database won't be wiped. If you re-enable the module, that configuration remains intact. Conversely, if you're using PM uninstall, it will wipe those variables and configuration settings that are associated with that module. It invokes the module's hook uninstall that will then do whatever database cleanup and other things like that that have been defined by the module's author. PM update will back up your enabled modules and download their latest releases, put the files in the proper places, and then it runs Drupal's update.php script. That script's required in order to make any necessary changes to the database schema. There's also a command called PM update code that does the same thing but without the update.php. I can't think of a whole lot of instances where that would be useful, but it's there if you need it. We have core directory. This command will return the path of a given Drupal module or theme, or the root of the Drupal install by default if you don't specify a particular module that you want to search for. A couple of examples there: cd drush cd, which will change the directory to the root of your current Drupal installation. cd drush cd path auto, which will change your directory to the folder for the path auto module. There's also some instructions within that command on how to set up a little function in your bash profile to use cdd instead of cd drush cd. You could just cdd path auto and it would send you to that folder. Update DB will execute that Drupal update.php script. In an instance where you've maybe updated Drupal manually or updated a module manually, that won't have run the update.php for you, so you need to do that as well, and you can do it from Drush with this command. Drupal also has an internal log module called watchdog. To list the most recent messages logged to watchdog, you can use the watchdog show command. There's various types and security levels associated with watchdog messages. You can reveal those with Drush using watchdog list, and you can also clean up old messages from watchdog if you want to do some maintenance on your database tables using watchdog delete, and that'll clear out old entries. A lot of times when you're developing a theme or a module, it can be very helpful to flush your database cache in Drupal, and cache clear is one command that I've found a huge time saver. Kind of convoluted to go through and do it through the web interface, so using cache clear is a big time saver during development cycles. Some modules also add their own cache tables, so cache clear will accept an argument specifying which cache table you want to clear. Cache clear all will just take any registered cache table and clear that. The cron command triggers Drupal's cron script that typically you'd have running via cron tab entry. This handles things like flushing expired cache items and indexing items for the search system, so a lot of times you'll want to update that during a development cycle, and it's a handy way to do that. Drush's rsync command allows you to use rsync to synchronize files between sites that are aliased in your Drush RC configuration. This is a command that can be used to deploy sites from one environment to another, and it's something that's nice for scripting those kind of deployments. The SQL dump command is very similar to executing a MySQL dump from the command line, but Drupal is independent of MySQL. You can use Postgres or a couple of other database systems now. This works independently of the database system you're using, so different from MySQL dump in that respect. This also has the advantage of drawing your username and password from your settings file, so you don't need to type those in all the time. And you can also set up your Drush RC to exclude content from certain tables. So in particular, your cache you probably don't want to carry over from one server to another. Your watchdog stuff you might not want to carry over from one server to another. So it's more efficient, and it can save some steps in terms of clearing caches and clearing down the watchdog tables later. And so naturally you can write the output of a SQL dump command to a file, or pipe it to another command for various scripting purposes, whatever you might need it to do. SQL sync in conjunction with the rsync command can be very powerful in deployment scripting. It'll use rsync to copy a database between servers. It works the same as piping a MySQL dump to a MySQL command, but again, all of the configuration is taken from your Drush RC file and from your settings file, so it handles it all smoothly and very quickly. The site install command allows for complete provisioning of a new Drupal installation without ever having to complete it within the browser window. Prior to this command, you could do a lot of your preliminary Drupal setup just through your settings file. You could define some things in there, but practical level, you still have to go through and complete the installation through the web interface. As of Drupal 7, you can use this site install command. It will complete the Drupal installation, specifying an installation profile and any of the settings that you'd normally set during the install and configuration process. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. It's pretty slick how that works. We also have a site upgrade command that will perform a major version upgrade of Drupal core and contributed modules. This one runs the update DB command when it's complete. I'll just run through these ones real quickly. PHP eval allows you to run arbitrary PHP code within a bootstrap Drupal context. Variable get and set allow you to control Drupal variables. So if for some reason you wanted to turn off clean URLs because maybe you just migrated to a server that has a problem with its rewrites, you could do that just by doing a variable set clean URLs 0. Search index and reindex will index your content for the search module, and the search status will indicate how many items remain for indexing. SQL CLI will enter MySQL's command line. I think this one only is compatible with MySQL. Enters the command line using Drupal's database user. SQL conf outputs an array of SQL configuration settings. SQL connect outputs a database connection string as you would use it on the command lines. Again, something useful for scripting. And SQL query allows you to execute an arbitrary SQL query on your Drupal database. Not only that, but Drush can be extended by other modules that you may have installed. This is, of course, on a per site level because it depends on what modules you've installed on that particular site. This link here will give you a list on Drupal.org of all of the modules that have integration with Drush and provide more functionality through it. On the right-hand side, you'll see some of the more popular modules that have that integration built in with them. Let's actually see Drush in action doing some stuff. First example that we're going to go through here is we're going to use Drush to download Drupal 7 onto a server, and then rather than configuring our install and doing all the Drupal settings stuff through the web interface, we'll use that site install command to actually set up that site. Nothing up my sleeve here. We've got nothing in our Drupal folder and nothing on the page there. So I'm downloading Drupal 7 and specifying that I want to put it in the Drupal folder rather than just a folder called Drupal 7 as it would by default. If we look in that folder now, you can see that there are a bunch of files, and if we refresh this page, it's prompting us to install Drupal. So now we can do Drush site install here. I'm specifying the standard installation profile and a database connection string there. So that's a database that I've already provided permissions to for this user, and it'll go through and actually create all the tables within that database. So we tell it to go ahead, and it's now installed Drupal. So this install.php page now tells us Drupal's already installed. So let's go back to the root of that, get rid of install.php, and there you can see we have Drupal's already installed for us. It was that easy. By default, it's setting the username and password both to admin. I've logged in with those, and you can see we've got a fresh install of Drupal 7 with all the nice dashboard stuff and that's now included with it. Let's check the status of our Drupal installation with Drush. We'll download a few modules and enable them using some of these commands. Drush status, got all that database information as I specified it in the that database connection string when we did the site install. We'll go back to our site here. We'll take a look at the modules listing. And these are all just the modules that come with Drupal 7. So one module that I tend to use on pretty much all of my sites is Path Auto. Path Redirect is another nice one to have. So let's go ahead and download those ones. So Drush DL Path Auto, Path Redirect. There we go. It's downloaded those into the Sites All Modules folder, as we would expect. And then we can tell it to enable Path Auto and Path Redirect. And it tells us it has enabled them successfully. So now if we go back to the modules page, scroll down, and right there at the bottom you can see Path Redirect and Path Auto have both been enabled. Let's just take a look at some other various Drush tricks here. The Drush PM list, or aliased as SM, you can see this is a list of all of the modules that are available to our site. It specifies what package they're part of, what the name of the module is, indeed whether it's a module or a theme, and then whether or not we've actually enabled it and what version it is. So next we will take a look at our watchdog log here. So WS is watchdog show. As you can see, it's logged those two modules that we enabled there, logged that we opened a session as admin when we logged in. So that's the sort of thing that watchdog logs if you're not familiar with that. We can now use drush wd all. This is actually a deprecated command, so it told me that it didn't particularly like that, but it's going to go ahead and do it anyway. So it's deleted 40 watchdog messages, and if we try watchdog show again, it's going to tell us no log messages available. So the delete has performed as we expected it to. A SQL dump. This is very inelegant what I've just done. So it's just dumping the entire contents of our database in a text MySQL format. A little nicer, I'll output the contents of this to just a text file now. It's done that. If we take a look at the contents of that text file, we can see that it has successfully written to that file. I've mentioned that I like clearing the cache and running cron from the command line. That's how easy it is to do those instead of clicking through the web interface. So you can see why that's something that I particularly like when I have a terminal window open all the time anyways. We talked about modules adding additional commands to Drush, but you can also install extensions that are available server-wide to all of your Drupal installations. A notable one of these is Drush Make. This allows you to specify a makefile that defines a ready-made Drupal site that can be built at the command line. It's useful for things like distributing an installation profile. A very good example of that right now is OpenAtrium. It's a Drupal-based intranet solution that's become quite popular and available as a makefile. On the OpenAtrium website, there actually is a makefile specification that you can download. download. We'll take a look at how that would work. There's the link where I've downloaded the makefile contents from. I've put those into a makefile that we will actually execute here. atriumstub.make is the makefile. Drush is just the name of the folder that I'm installing this into. It goes ahead and downloads everything that I need for this. Although I've sped this video up, it didn't happen nearly this quickly. So it's gone ahead and downloaded everything that I need for this. What was previously an empty folder now has our Drupal files in it. OpenAtrium is an installation profile, so we see in profiles there's a folder now called OpenAtrium. That doesn't normally come with Drupal. And so if we refresh this page that was empty before, Drupal's prompting us to install it, and it's got OpenAtrium as an installation profile available to us. So if we go through and install it as we would with any other normal Drupal site, it's like magic. We've got a pre-configured intranet with a bunch of features and slick themes, and some smart people have done all the hard work for us here. We can put all these Drush concepts together and concoct a common Drupal workflow that'll save us a lot of time when we're setting up site. One way to do that would be to write a makefile that specifies the various modules, themes, and external libraries that you want to use. That's one place where that Drush make is very handy. Where the PM download doesn't handle something is with external libraries. So if you're doing things like TinyMCE or things like that the code is handled somewhere outside of Drupal's repositories, you can actually download those using makefiles where you can't do that with the PM commands. Assuming we're dealing with at least Drupal 7, we could then take the resulting files from that makefile execution and use site install to complete the setup of the site. And then finally we could enable some of the common modules that we might want using the Drush enable command. So we could do all that basically with 3 lines of code in a bash script there. It's pretty easily scriptable, and you can pass in some other parameters that would allow you to just run a script and custom make your sites along the way. A particular use case that I've had for using Drush to address this kind of thing recently has been deploying things from a development server to a production server. It's a pretty common task for a Drupal shop. And in our particular environment at the university, we actually have 4 servers. Between development and production, you can add testing and staging as well. So it becomes almost a full-time job to be shuffling sites around between those. We're working on solving that problem with Drush to shuttle all these sites around. So we initially can install our site using Drush downloads, site installs, and enabling modules all through scripts. And then we can shuttle things over to the production server using Drush SQL Sync and Drush rsync, assuming that we've configured everything within our Drush RC configuration. If you're interested in learning more about Drush, check out the project page on Drupal.org. Links to some resources on there, and it's under very active development, so there's a lot of stuff going on. Additionally, I've got a link here to a video that was presented by the developers of the Drush project at DrupalCon in Washington, D.C. last year. It's quite a good talk. It was a full house there. I had to sit on the floor at that one. These guys actually will be presenting at DrupalCon in San Francisco again. I know I've signed up for an advanced Drush session there, which I think those videos will be available online once that is complete as well. So if you're interested in learning more about Drush, those are excellent resources for that. My company is going to be hosting Drupal Camp Alberta here in Calgary this summer. So if you're interested in taking part in something like that and learning a little more about Drupal, I'd encourage you to check out drupalcampalberta.org. It's the information on there is still pretty stale, but we'll be updating it with information for this year's event soon.